Okay, YouTube is now live, so we're ready to begin, I think. So, welcome to the July meeting of the Planning Committee of Liss Parish Council. My name is Councillor Keith Budden. I'm chairman of the committee, and the meeting is being taken via Zoom because we're currently unable to meet in person, and it's being broadcast on YouTube where members of the public can watch if they wish. So we'll begin with. Okay, YouTube is now live, so we're ready to begin, I think. Oh, wait a minute, let me just. So, welcome to. YouTube's running a bit behind and playing in my rear, so let me get rid of that. Right. Can we have any apologies, please, Lizzie?
So we have had apologies from Councillor Edwards and Councillor Gerard.
Okay, thank you. So we now come to the declarations of interest, which, because of the way we're now working over the Zoom, means that we each in turn have to make a declaration. So I'll begin with me. I am Councillor Keith Budden. I'm a member of this Parish Council Planning Committee. I have read the agenda, I've read any representations made, and I have no interest to declare in any of the items we are discussing this evening. Howard, can I take you next?
Yes, my name is Howard Lindsley. I'm a member of Liss Parish Council. I've read the agenda and I have no pecuniary interest in any of the items, although I would point out that for the 8th and last application, I am a trustee of Newman Collard Playing Fields. Yes,
I will mention about that in a moment, actually. So, but I'll do that when we've all spoken. Sheila, can you unmute, please, and do your declaration? Oh, you're still muted. You're still muted. Try now. Yeah.
Right. My name is Sheila Baldwin. I'm a member of this Parish Council Planning Committee. I have read the agenda and I have no interest in any of the applications.
Thank you. Sue, can you unmute, please?
I'm Sue Halstead. I'm a co-opted member of Liss Parish Council Planning Committee. I confirm that I have read the agenda. I have considered each application and I've read any deputations received. I have no pecuniary interest to declare in any of the applications, although like Councillor Lindsay, I should perhaps say that I am a member of the tennis club, which is adjacent to the property of the last item on the agenda. But as a co-opted member of the committee, I will not have an opportunity to vote.
Okay.
On any of the applications.
Thank you, Sue. Claire.
I, Councillor Williams, I'm a parish councillor of Liss Parish Council. I confirm I've read the agenda and have no interest to declare in any of the items being considered this evening.
Okay, thank you. And Nick, please.
I, Nick Wilson, am Parish Councillor of Liss Parish Council, member of the Planning Committee. I confirm I've read the agenda, considered each application, have read any deputations received, and wish to declare an interest in the following application being considered this evening. Item 6, reference 02645, Newman Collard. I will remain muted during the discussion on this application, will not vote on it if there is a vote. I'm saying this because I am a member of the shed and therefore have invested in it.
Okay, thank you. Just for the public watching as well, we also have our assistant clerk, Lizzie Keeling, who's taking the minutes this evening, and also Councillor Andy Smith, who's not a member of the Planning Committee, but is joining us because one of the items that we have to discuss on the agenda this evening is the comments on the Liss Village Centre redesign brief, which was referred back to this meeting, following the full council meeting that we had a couple of weeks ago. If members are happy, I would like to propose that we take that item first, so that then Councillor Smith can leave us once we've discussed that item. And I'm conscious of the number of items that we have on the agenda. So if I can ask members, please, to try and keep any comments as brief as you can. And I'd like us to finish this item on the agenda within the next sort of 30 minutes, if we can. So who wants to kick off with making any points?
Could I offer to do so, as I suggested it should come to planning?
Yes, please do that.
The reason for suggesting it was, it seems to me that in looking at the village centre as a whole, it isn't purely a highways issue. And actually this provides an opportunity for us to seek expert advice on the whole look and sort of ambience of the area. So for example, it refers in 2.4a to visual improvements to the Lower Mead shopping area. I wonder whether we could go a bit further and talk about making that area outside Tesco's more of a social amenity. I don't know what our expert, whoever we appoint, might recommend. The sort of things I have in mind are trees to soften the look of the place, perhaps metal benches round the trees to encourage socializing when we're not in a COVID situation, possibly something like an arcade. But it is, as we've recognized in our various plans, a rather unlovely looking part of the village. And yet there is a space there which I feel could be better used with some creative input. So my suggestion is that we should specifically ask for something about that Lower Mead shopping area in a separate sub point and talk about it as a social amenity and making it more attractive to be in. I also think we might have a point about tree planting as a separate item. Those are my thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Sue?
Thank you. I don't disagree with Nick at all. I just maybe should just point out one or two things. In fact, an arcade system was put forward, I think, by the Village Design Group, maybe 10 years ago more. I can't really remember. But they came up with quite a comprehensive scheme for such a thing. And I know that they would be very supportive still if it could happen. When we actually did investigations on it with the owner of, because that whole area outside Tesco's actually is only a narrow pavement close to the road that actually is highways. The rest all belongs to Tesco's, the owner of the Tesco block. So it's private land. And when we did investigations, there were drainage and utility issues underneath, and there wasn't any possibility of putting up an arcade. But, you know, things change, and maybe there are means of doing these things that didn't exist then. So I just thought I should mention it, that it does mean very much involving the agent and the owner of the building and understanding that it's not highways land. While I just thought that there may be not enough mention in the document that we received about involving all the businesses enough. I just feel that for any of this to take off, it needs to have the business community absolutely running with it. And otherwise you might run into the buffers quite quickly. The EHDC conservation officer, I thought ought to be on the list, or maybe the SDNP, but conservation officer, since it's a conservation area, should be included, I thought. And maybe the community rail partnership should be mentioned along with Network Rail, because they coordinate all the things that go on around the station. So those are my thoughts. on what I've already seen. But, you know, good luck to you.
Okay, thanks, Sue. Howard, do you got anything you want to bring into this?
I was going to make the same comments as Sue did about the ownership of the land. I fully support something being done if that's possible. I think many years ago, probably more than 10 years ago, there were talks of actually rerouting Hillbrow Road behind the pub. I don't think that can be done anymore. But I think one thing that is probably impractical, but I think we should perhaps look at, is closing Station Road from the roundabout to the station to traffic, which would mean rerouting traffic down Andler's Ash Road rather than up Station Road. As I say, it's probably a bit too far out, but I think we should have a look at it.
Okay. Thank you. Sheila, anything you want to add? Oh, just a second, you're muted again.
Sorry, going back to what Howard was saying, Andler's Ash Road is going to have an awful lot more traffic soon than it already has. So if you were to reroute anything along there, that's going to add even more so to the traffic. I don't see how you can shut off that section, considering that so much traffic goes up Station Road, up towards Farnham Road. And also, how are you going to get traffic from, well, up Forest Road and that way, Rake Road, etc. I'm just thinking this through. I just think that every time somebody comes up with a good idea, it throws up more and more problems. So I would think we'd all have to think very carefully about. I mean, I agree that it would be lovely to pedestrianise the whole area outside the shops, but it's just not possible.
Okay. Thanks, Sheila. Claire, you got anything you want to?
Just to say that I'd love for Station Road and all of Hillbrow Road to be pedestrianised, but that's because I live there. And everybody's ideas kind of highlight to me the need to get some kind of expert in to give an opinion on what's possible and what's practical, because none of us are town planners. So every idea that we have will have loads of things that we don't know about or we don't consider because it's just not what our skill set is. So I guess I'm saying I support the paper that we should go out and get an independent view.
Okay, thanks, Claire. I mean, I think from my perspective, I think Nick's ideas are interesting. I hadn't really thought about making that area more of a social amenity in terms of the outside area there. So I think that's worth pursuing. As Sue said, there was talk, it's got to be 10 years ago at least, of building a colonnade essentially in front of the shops. And there were technical difficulties. And also, if I remember correctly, the view of the owner of the building at the time, and I believe he's still the same owner, was that he was not against the idea of anything being done there as long as he didn't have to pay for it. And so as long as the cost would come out of public purse, which is again something obviously that we need to consider, especially in the current environment. But I think there's some interesting thoughts there. Andy, for your part, since you've joined us to listen to this, anything you want to say?
I think it's been really helpful to hear people's comments, and they've all been very helpful. I agree with Sue's point about engagement being really important, and so we can try and bring that out a bit more. Cindy has volunteered to be the link between the businesses and the council in this in this work going forward, having one foot in kind of both camps. So I thought that was really, really helpful. I think that the brief covers off possibility of pedestrianisation in the village centre, but we could bring it out more and just say, actually, we want some advice on kind of reduction in cars going through and changing the use to kind of encouraging pedestrians, including pedestrianisation. It may be that we get something back saying it's impossible for whatever reason, but actually if we don't ask, we don't know. And at least if we do get an answer one way or the other, we'll have a reply when people do raise it with us, because a lot of people would want that to happen. So I think it's all very helpful, and I'll work with Lizzie to try and incorporate the comments as we take the document back through the project review group to get signed off and go to tender. So yeah. Thank you is my kind of ultimate comment.
Okay, thanks, Andy. I mean, the only other part I was going to add there was about, Sue mentioned about the Community Rail Partnership. One of my joys is that I'm now chair of the Community Rail Partnership. But one of the interesting things which came out in discussion that I had with South Western Railway in the last couple of weeks is that they now have a fund which they're giving to the rail partnerships each year. And whereas in the past they've been really quite strict that money has to be spent within the station environment, within the station environment, they're actually now taking a more flexible view to that, and they're saying if it enhances the general area around the station and therefore might still encourage more people to use the station or make the station more attractive, then they're not saying that the end of station approach is where their interest ends. So I think that's something that we might want to follow up with them.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay, well, I think unless anyone's got anything else, I'll say thanks to Andy for attending that bit. Andy, you're welcome to stay and listen to the rest if you want to, but equally,
I think I might watch it on YouTube rather than participate, if that's okay.
Okay, thanks, Andy. So we move back to the agenda now, and the first thing is the approval of the minutes of our meeting on the 29th of June 2020. Can I have someone to propose the minutes, please? Claire, and someone to second? Howard. Thank you. Are there any matters arising from the minutes that anybody wants to raise? Sue?
Is there any more to report back on the Longmore thing, which was the action point up 285/20?
I'm thinking no at the moment. I don't think there's anything. Lizzie, do you know if there's anything?
So I have, we put it on social media, and I have had about 10 members of the public asked to be on a list to be, when it comes out for consultation, we will contact them and let them know. But no, it was more just to ensure that parishioners knew that, you know, we're on it and we understand what it's happening and we are prepared.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? No, fine, okay. We'll move on then. We don't have any questions from members of the public. So we move on to the planning applications. Just before we do that, I will say that on the point of Newman Tollard maintenance building, Hillborough Road, obviously we have the issue of a couple of people having involvement with Newman Tollard or with the tennis club. And also we actually all have an interest in this because Liss Parish Council stand to benefit from the new garage if it's built. So we have asked the monitoring officer and planning officer for dispensation. But I would just ask that when we come to discuss that one, that we do all bear that in mind, that we can all be seen to have an interest in that. So nothing to stop us discussing it, but do just bear in mind that how it can be perceived. So if we take the first application, which is 71B Station Road in Liss. This is a application for the variation of conditions 11 and 19 of the planning permission SDMP 14002544 to allow the substitution of plans to address retrospectively alterations to the approved development, including use and layout of the ground floor, parking and manoeuvring layout, substitution of half dormers by roof lights, alterations to the ground floor, and alterations to the southeast facing elevation. Lizzie, are you able to bring up some of the, I suppose if we could see the elevations, it's probably the most useful thing on this one, I think, initially. I should perhaps say, and I don't have a problem saying, because the applicant is well aware of it, that where it says in the planning and in the access and design statement about that this was brought about by a complaint, the complaint was raised by myself, because what's built is not what was agreed in the original plans.
Would you like to see the
You see the elevations, if you got them, Lizzie, the elevations that show the car park bit and the storage unit.
here? Is that? Or is it? Yeah. Is this okay there?
We're not seeing them at the moment.
You're not.
You just share your screen.
Sorry. Oh, you've disabled screen sharing.
Oh, have I?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, I didn't mean to. Right, should be on now. Great.
Elevations.
Okay, yeah. So I think most of us, well, I hope we all know where this is. It's next to Puddle Ducks and Vista and Alpha Graphics. And what was originally proposed here was that the whole of the ground floor would be car parking for the flats above. What the applicant is arguing in their, or applicant's agent is arguing, is that because of the ground levels, making it all car parking was not practical, and also it wasn't possible to have it as a single span all the way across because it then didn't meet building regulations, which I can believe, because that actually would be quite a huge span. However, my own view, well, I'll keep my own view to myself at the moment, but I do have issues about the argument over the ground levels. But who wants to kick off on this with any comment? Sue?
The one particular one I would like to look at is the parking and access. There's one of the drawings.
Yeah, there's one with the sweeps, isn't there?
The sweeps, yes. Not that one.
No. Shout if you see it.
Not yet. Perhaps while you're finding it, I could say that I actually don't particularly have a huge problem with the fact that the dormer windows have been left out. You know, it's unfortunate, but I don't think it's
that's the one.
That's the one. Now, I went down and had a look and walked around. When I went, there was Alpha Graphics had their van parked right in front of their building. So all these little, I don't know what shape they are, quartiles or something close up to the building. That whole area was blocked up with the huge Alpha Graphics van. I believe that's where they have got permission to park.
Yeah.
But whether or not they are there, getting into that garage where 1 and 2 are shown, I just don't think anybody could do it. You couldn't get the number 1 car in because of this Alpha Graphics building comes up, plus the fact that at the bottom of the alleyway, if you like, between the 2 buildings, actually a door up into the flats above the Puddle Ducks and Alpha Graphics.
Yeah.
So it's a right of way there for into the door for the people who live above that. It's absolutely impossible, in my view, to get into that garage. Maybe 1 car could if there was nothing parked in front of Alpha Graphics. So I think the highways authorities have had slightly sloping shoulders because, as we know, the National Park have not yet got parking standards. But the parking is just a non-starter.
Yeah.
There is also, if you read all the documentation, there is a medium still flooding risk. It's not a non-existent flooding risk. There is a medium flooding risk. So frankly, I just, apart from the fact I don't mind the loss of the dormers too much, I think the whole thing is a strong objection. It just won't work, in my view.
Yeah, thanks, Sue. Howard, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes. When we considered this application, I think most of what we discussed was around this parking, and I think we felt quite strongly about it. And I think that the person who's built it must have known that he was taking a risk. He must have known that he was building something that hadn't got planning permission, and he was obviously hoping to get away with it. And I think authorities are under great pressure to say, well, it's built now. Yes. But I think, you know, this is somebody I understand has developed stuff quite a lot. He's an experienced man, and I support everything that Sue has said, both about the dormers, which I think are relatively trivial, but I think the parking just won't work like this, and I think it ought to be done properly.
Okay. Thank you. Sarah, do you want to say anything?
I agree wholeheartedly with both Sue and Howard. I've spent a lot of time standing at the level crossing waiting for the trains to go past, trying to figure out how anybody would get in and out of that garage, and just can't figure it out. I don't think the parking is practical at all.
Okay, thank you. Sheila?
Well, I noticed that the highways have said they've got no objection to parking and turning, although they admit it will be height. But then there was quite a lot that I read through very quickly, I admit it, about something about trying to persuade something about nil parking, that lots of places being built can get away with having no parking spaces. So I didn't quite understand that. Going back to the flood risk, I noticed that they say that the flood risk assessment had no objection, as all the residential space was upstairs, but at the same time they're saying that a flood evacuation plan should be prepared for residents, which makes me think that, well, yes, it's very high risk there. So I think that I agree that parking seems very, very tight and okay. If the developer would agree that it can be a nil parking area, fine. But then I still think there is the problem with possible flood risk.
Okay, thank you, Sheila. Nick, June.
I think I agree that we should maintain our strong objection, though I have a feeling that the planning authority may not do the necessary in terms of reversing what the owner has actually done. But I do think we should make the point that we did in the previous objection, that it sets a bad precedent if they get permission in terms of preempting planning permission. On the parking, there's also the point I think we made at some point about having to back out into the road. I think realistically, there is the maximum number of cars you could have parked would be two, I mean, one outside and one in. But even that would involve backing out into the road. On the flood assessment, I think we should perhaps say that we would, if the planning authority is minded to give approval, that they should require the recommendations in the flood assessment to be carried out in terms of raising the floor level and having an evacuation plan. And I think, and also to reinforce the point about change of use of the front bit, which is currently storage. If there was to be any suggestion that it would become retail or anything else, it should be the subject of a separate planning application.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think I would support everything that everyone said. I think we should maintain our strong objection. I totally agree with Sue that I think when highways have said there's no problem, I think they're heading on the fact that South Downs National Park doesn't currently have a parking requirement. And I think B is that they've just carried out a desk study on this. And if you look at a desk study, then those swept paths might well be achievable. But if you actually go and look at the property, you realise that they're not at all achievable. And I just don't think you could fit any more than one car in that garage successfully at all. Howard, do you have something you want to add?
Yes, I just wanted to add, in practical terms, I think that the way it's designed, people will not use it. I mean, it's one thing to have a garage. It's more difficult or impossible to force people to use it. That area is, at the moment, outside is where playgroup children arrive. And I know they put a notice to parents to say no parking in this area. But I think it will end up with vehicles parked there. And if that playgroup does stay there, I think it will become danger for the children that attend it. So I don't think people will use it as it is.
No, I think you're right. I would agree with that. I think as well that I think we should also make comment about the storage space, because it is retail units thinly disguised as storage space, I think would be a fair description. The storage space would not normally have double glazed windows to the full height windows to the outside, nor, if you look carefully at the plan, it's the first time I've ever come across a storage space that requires its own WC. And so I think, I think there are clearly plans to make that retail space at some point in the future. I appreciate that we have to judge what's in front of us, but I think we should be wary of that, because should that become retail space, and I did notice in the planning statement, it said that possibly one unit might become a pharmacy for the surgery, which is further up Station Road, then I think that's only going to exacerbate the traffic problems there. Yes, I appreciate that this was a retail unit in the past, but it was a very low traffic retail unit in the sense that it was essentially an outlet for church publications, and so it would probably have been more likely to be local people who might wander down there on on occasion rather than people actually going to the shop. But I just think it's something that we need to be aware of. But yeah, I in summary, I think we should maintain our strong objection. Okay, so if we're all agreed on that, and I think we are, so I won't go around and take a vote because I think we're all in agreement from what I've heard. So we'll move on to the next application, which is Stonefield, St Patrick's Lane in Liss. And this application is for a single-storey rear extension, a two-storey extension to the side and the rear, and a first floor extension to the side. It's quite a reasonably sized property. It does sit fairly close to the road. Again, I'll throw it open to anyone who wants to make a comment. Sue.
Only a small one. None of the plans show where the parking and the access are. I'm sure it's all right, but I think we perhaps, saying there's no objection, we should say providing that access and parking is adequate, because it's on a sort of difficult bend there. So that
Yeah.
it doesn't. I'm sure there is, but there's nothing showing on any of the plans that I could see, and I think there should have been.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to raise anything?
I couldn't see any objections apart from I couldn't sort of assess the size issue. No doubt they'll look at that, but from the neighbour's point of view, it didn't look as though it would, would be affected. So I would say we should not object.
Anyone else want to say anything? Sheila, do you have anything you want to say? Oh, just a moment, still muted. Oh, sorry, Sheila, we can't hear you in a moment.
Sorry, it just seems that there's going to be quite a considerable amount added to this property. Does it exceed the 30% addition, blah, blah?
Yes, I mean that was my only concern with it was whether it does exceed the 30%. I think we should ask that the officers look at that to satisfy themselves that it doesn't. It doesn't exceed 30%, because I couldn't actually tell from the plans whether it will or not. I couldn't make my mind up.
But apart from that, there don't seem to be any objections from the nearest neighbours.
No. Okay, thanks, Sheila. Howard, anything you want to say?
No, I'm afraid I didn't manage to open the documents on this. So I think it'd be better I will abstain.
Okay, thank you. And Claire, anything you want to say?
I'm fine with it. I went past one friend, they had 6 cars parked in their driveway. So they've got plenty of space, and while their neighbours are actually quite close because the lane is really narrow, and none of the building work will infringe because it's on the other side.
Okay, thank you. So I think then what we're saying is no objection, subject to just double checking the parking, but from what Claire said, it sounds absolutely fine. And also just checking that it doesn't exceed the 30% under the rule in the National Park Plan, local plan. So in which case we'll move on then to look at the land at Warren Hill, Warren Road, which we've had this site before us a number of times over the last few years. This one is an application for a replacement field shelter / store, a new field shelter, a new field store, and a new pedestrian access gate. We have had a representation on this from Angela Wright, who has said that while she doesn't object to the replacement field shelter, She does object to the Newfield shelter and the Newfield store, as she sees it adding to the volume of development on the site. And she also doesn't have an objection to the new access gate, providing that it is kept to being a pedestrian gate. So just to give you that feedback for those who've not seen Angela's comments. Sue, do you want to start on this one? I know I think you basically share what Angela said.
Yes, I went past yesterday and actually had all the misgivings that it subsequently transpired that Angela had already submitted. Obviously there is a bit of a messy area around where field store, the first one, location A is, and if that can be tidied up with a better field store, that's not a problem. But location B is definitely putting a new construction in the middle of the field is just, and the National Park Plan, which talks about landscape and protecting the environment, it just is a nonsense to put it up in the middle of the field, rather than, if there's going to have to be one, it could be down closer to the edge where it would be less visible in the landscape. And again, as I was driving past slowly, I was very conscious that it was not a good place to park, because there was a car behind me that couldn't get by, that was a bit upset with the fact that I was going slowly. So I think all the points that Angela has made, I would fully support. The National Park Local Plan has a policy, SD24, which is all about equestrian uses. And I think we could look at that and say that the application is in contravention of that. There are also points in SD2, which is about ecosystems, and SD9, which is about the impact on the sink. The whole area at the moment is very fragmented and cluttered with what used to be called horticulture infrastructure, and it really is in contravention of the aims of the national park.
Okay, thanks, Sue. Anyone else wish to say anything else? Nick?
I hesitate ever to disagree with Sue, but I think I have a bit more sympathy towards horticulture than perhaps she has. I think it is a bit of an asset in a community to have some animals as well as plants and grass and trees. However, having said that, I was amazed really that the location of the proposed item B, the new field shelter, bang in the middle. And I noticed that the application makes a virtue of the structures being away from the tree roots, whereas actually I would have thought it would be better, they would have been better to have made a virtue of hiding any structures amongst the trees and dealing with the issue of tree roots by some form of mitigation. The bit I'm definitely opposed to item B. I think item A is fine. Item C, I'm puzzled. There is a small hut already there in roughly where I think item C is, and I don't know if anyone has any intelligence about that hut. There's a family that go and tend to their pony or horse and obviously enjoy the amenity and put things in and out of the hut, no doubt. I'm just wondering if that's this is a proposal to expand that that hut, or is it quite separate? I don't know if anybody knows.
Okay, I've got to confess I don't know, but thanks, Nick. Sheila, anything you want to add? You're on mute again, Sheila. Let's see if I can do it from this end.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, wait a minute, I've just muted you again. to unmute. Sheila, I'm sorry, you're still muted. It won't unmute for some reason. Oh, no, it has. Yep. Now we
Right.
can. Yeah,
Can you hear now?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, I have no objection to location A. I walk past there every day and it could do with tidying up. Like Nick, I'm rather surprised at location B, which is on the hill, very visible from the road. I've no objection to the horses having shelter, but I'm not quite sure why it can't be on the flatter land down near the road. I recognise what Sue's saying about parking along there, and but I'm not sure how many people would park because it's quite far along Warren Road. Most people go up the track past location A, and I would imagine anybody parking near location B and C would be just the people who own the horses in there, and presumably they wouldn't be there for very long except to top up water, etc. I'm just a bit not quite sure what it means about the new pedestrian access gate. Presumably that means access to the owners and it's not a public access.
No, I think it is just access for the owners. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, basically, it was just that oddity of the shelter being stuck on the side of the hill that surprised me. I have no objection to animals needing shelter, and I don't think it's going to bother that many people. That's my view.
Okay, thank you, Sheila. Claire, do you have anything?
Nothing further to add, anything more than anybody else has said.
Okay, thank you. And Howard, anything you want to add?
Not really. I find it odd that the building has been put away from the trees, and they're saying it's away from the tree roots, and perhaps I'm a bit too suspicious, but I wonder if that's establishing a building in the middle which may at some stage in the future be wanted for something even bigger.
Yes, yeah, it's possible. I mean, the only thing I'm going to add to that is, I don't know how many of you have seen, but this afternoon the landscape officer has actually added their comments onto the application, and they've said they have no objection, which surprised me. I thought that they would probably object the same reason as everyone else has, but they said there was no objection. Now, the issue we find ourselves in here, though, is that as a committee, we can't cherry pick part of an application. So we have to either decide that we're for this application or against it. And from what I've heard, I'm not sure what the overall feel on that is. So for those of us who can vote, I'm going to go around and ask you to vote. So can you either say that you're for the application or against the application, bearing in mind it's the whole application? Sheila, can I start with you?
So, sorry, Keith, could I just make a proposal before we go round?
Yes, yeah.
It's just that if the landscape architect is being so cavalier about having this thing, you know, this blot on the landscape, as we would see it, should we not strongly object to that particular one, while then making it clear that it doesn't apply to the other two?
Yes, we could do. Yes, we could do that. But what I'm saying is, we still have to come to an opinion overall. The whole thing. We unfortunately, it's part of the thing. We can't design by committee, so we have to either be for it or against it as a principle of the whole development.
No, I was really asking whether you would ask us to say if we're against. Sorry, we're for, strongly against, or against. That was all I was asking.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to do that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I'll start with you then, Nick.
Well, I think we should make a point and say strongly against,
Okay, thank you.
but then make it clear that it is in relation to item B. Thinking about item C, I think this may be retrospective. It may be the actual hut that already exists, in which case we need to be aware that that we may be endorsing a preemptive siting of something.
Yeah, okay. Sheila.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah.
Right. Going back to what Nick was saying, there is a little gate already further along the road. So I'm not strong against it because I would like to be able to say, yes, go ahead with location A. And it is just location B that I think should be put back for reconsideration. So
Okay, so you're saying that you're for it, but we made you comment on B.
Sorry, say that again.
Are you saying you're for the application, but we make you comment on B?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Howard.
I agree with Nick. Strong objection. I think to have just an objection will be a bit wishy-washy, and they may not take it so seriously. So I think a strong objection, by all means, with words that makes it clear why we've got a strong objection. But I think it should be a strong objection.
Okay, thank you. Claire?
I will go with the majority and strongly object.
And I'm also a strong objection. So, okay, so strong objection, but we'll feed back the comments as to why, Lizzie, when we put our comments in. Okay, so we move on to Cumber Studio, another property that those of us been on the committee a while are well familiar with. Cumber Studio, 31 Andrews Road, Liss. And the proposal is for an increase to part of the roof height, a single-story extension to the side and the rear, the front entrance porch and dormer windows, and new roof lights. And I think probably everyone knows where this is, but in case you don't, it's one of the properties which is now sort of within the middle of, well, that goes on to Andrews Road, but is surrounded by, on one side at least, by the new development for Charla Homes. Who wants to kick off on this one?
Can I ask something?
Yes, please. Yes, yeah.
Looking at the plans, I wasn't quite sure. There seem to be 3 properties. There's Cumber's Granary, Cumber's Studio, and Cumber's Cottage.
Yeah.
But the application seems to be incorporating a garage for Cumber's Granary added on to the proposed development of Cumber's Studio. Are they all one and the same property, or are they 3 different properties?
No, they are 3 separate properties.
So basically, what Cumber's Studio is requesting is to incorporate something for Cumber's Granary as well.
Yes, yes. I mean, to say 2 of the properties are in, I think I'll go to see, but 2 of the properties are in the same family. So, which I suspect is where that's coming from. But Sue, do you want to come in on that?
Cumber's Granary is the property sort of beyond it, and that doesn't have garaging. So these garages have always been, they're always there, have been within the building to provide parking for Cumber's Granary, which is a separate property, sort of like a T on the left-hand side if you're looking at the plans. The garage that's in closest to the property itself is the one that's intended for the studio, and Cumber's Cottage, which is to the bottom end, has its own parking and garage. So it's the Cumbers Granary garaging is part of their planning permission for the granary, which is a separate building. So I have two issues on this. I'm not really objecting at all, but there are two concerns. One is the amount of roof lights. So we need to be sure that the dark night skies policy, you know, that there is proper coverage for night skies. And I would like to see some sort of a condition, I think, making sure that the garage for the studio is maintained as a garage and is not incorporated into residential use, because I don't think there is any other acceptable area for parking. So given that there are doors out front and back, I sort of wondered about it and thought, well, the best we can do is probably ask for a condition to ensure that it just doesn't become part of the residence.
Yeah.
One of the there are 2 bedrooms now downstairs, but not really a proper bathroom close to the bedrooms. There's a loo off the utility. I mean, that's their problem, really. It's not a planning issue particularly, but I thought it was strange and made me wonder about the future need to incorporate the garage. So that's why I think it's quite important that we make sure that there's a condition maintaining that as a garage.
Yes.
Otherwise, I didn't have an objection to the principle.
Okay. Thanks, Sue. Howard, do you have anything on this?
Yes, I'm thinking about the history of this. It was originally to be a games room, and planning permission was sought for a single-storey building, and the owner, which I believe is still the same owner, got his planning permission and then built it double-storey, and then after having built it, he said, well, it's a nice building, and appealed against that and managed to get it through. And I'm wondering what his plans are for this in the long term. It's definitely expanding. Is it going to become a separate residence? And is that a problem with all the separate residences that have been built in the area? I didn't see really the purpose of what he's trying to achieve.
So do you want to come back in on that?
The difference now, Howard, from where it was when we had all these appeals and, as you say, a long history, this is now within the settlement policy boundary. At the time, they were creating a new residence outside the settlement policy boundary, and that was the whole issue for being refused and going to appeal. But that has fallen away now because it is within the settlement policy boundary, and it is a separate residence. That's already the case.
Thanks, Sue. Claire, do you have anything you want to?
Nothing further from me. Seems to be my theme today.
Nick?
Well, I come to it with a sort of predilection to be supportive, given that I do have some sympathy with someone whose property is being built around by a large development. So I'm glad that we seem to be heading towards not objecting, but I do agree with Sue about both the dark skies and about maintaining the garage as a garage. So I hope we can all not object, but with those 2 points to be made.
Okay, thanks. Sheila, do you have anything else you wanted to say on this one?
Not really. I mean, it will be visible from the road, but then there are going to be so many new houses along there visible anyway that I don't see any problem.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I think I would fully support what Sue has said. I think we do need to be mindful of the dark night skies with the roof lights. So I think that's something we need to make sure that we cover off in our comments. And I agree with keeping the garage, but other than that, I can't see any reason to object to it. So I think if everyone's happy, we'll go with no objection on this one, subject to those items. So we then move on to Brickfields, Hawkley Road, Liss. And this is a 2-story rear extension, a new entrance and porch to the side, replacement windows, revised vehicle access and drive, and a replacement detached garage. Does anyone want to see any of the drawings up on this, or does anyone have any comments that they want to kick off with?
Happy to say what I thought.
Okay.
I haven't been there to look, but I had a look on Google Maps, and I don't think didn't look to me as though it would affect the neighbours in any significant way. My only question about it was size and the 30% point. Otherwise, I had no objection.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Sue?
Yes, I would agree with Nick. We just need to make sure that it doesn't contravene the SD31 policy. It's a pretty little cottage, so I think the critical thing will be the making sure that materials are matching and complementary to what's already there. So otherwise, I don't see any reason to object.
Okay, thank you. Sheila, do you have anything you want to say on this one?
Not really anything to add. I suppose I was a bit puzzled why they wanted to add a shower room to the garden room, but there you go.
Okay. Thanks. Claire?
Again, agreeing with everybody else about the size thing and something else. I can't remember. Yeah, as long as it's not too big.
Okay, thank you. And Howard, anything you want to?
Nothing to add.
Okay, thank you. So I think we're saying no objection, subject to checking, the officer checking that it's not more than 30%.
Could we add something about materials?
We can ask, yeah.
So I mean, just to reinforce our views about design and so on.
Yeah, we can say we want materials to be sympathetic to what's around it. Okay, so we move on then to 3 Roderbank Farm Lane, a single-story rear extension. This is the first house as you go into Roderbank Farm Lane on the left-hand side. Anybody have any comments? I'll start with Claire this time.
Let's go first. The only thing I was concerned about is whether it would infringe on the neighbours. Would it? Because the extension will be right up against the neighbour's house. Would it get in their way? They don't appear to have objected to it though.
No. Where should I go now? Sue.
I didn't really have any objection, again, providing the neighbours are okay. I thought, again, because of the roof lights, there's the dark night skies element to just draw attention to, but I didn't think there was any cause to object.
Okay, thanks. Sheila, anything you want to add on this one?
Not really any objection. I noticed that there was a query about the need to have a satisfactory drainage system for surface water because there will be an increased runoff. No objection in principle, apparently.
Okay, thank you. Nick?
I agree, no objection. I picked up the point about light, although they are knocking down a conservatory, and for all we know, they may have had incredibly bright lights in there. So it may be better than it was, but it still needs to comply in terms of blinds and so on. I think they should be congratulated for giving us a lighting assessment. It seems to be quite a rare event, unless I've been missing them with the other ones.
Yeah, that's true. And Howard, anything you want to?
No, I didn't manage to open these, so I'll stay quiet.
Okay, thanks, Howard. And I have no objection, so I think we're saying no objection. The only thing possibly being the blinds on that one. So then we come to West Fork Farnham Road. This is what was Harris Caravans, but apparently now it's been renamed South Downs Caravans, which was news to me, so I read the application. It's the creation of a new access road and the use of existing access road for additional caravan storage, the relocation of the building, and 2 additional holiday pods. Now, Sue has suggested on this that it may be worth us going on a site visit to this site to have a look. We've got time before our comments have to be in. I've got to say I'm open to the idea of a site visit, because it's a while since I've been out to have a look at that site and things have changed over that time. But what do other people feel? Do other people feel that we'd like a site visit?
I think that would be useful for this purpose, but also to get an up-to-date sort of feel for what the owners are actually up to, because I suspect this may not be the last application we will be asked to consider. So I do like that idea. May I just add a couple of points?
Uh-huh.
I mean, my worries about it are actually to do with aesthetics. You know, this large slab-like barn, which has no sort of, you know, architectural merit. And I also wonder about the metal security fence, although, you know, it is black and therefore not, you know, not as offensive as it might have been. So my thought was that we've got this arboricultural report. We should be, whatever we say, we should be saying there should be some very firm requirements about planting of trees and vegetation to soften the impact. And I also thought that we should make a point about the roof lights, which I think there are 8 in terms of the dark skies.
Yes, yeah, agreed. Okay, so Sue, do you want to come in on that?
I think we should perhaps note that actually the existing property building is actually in Gretham Parish. But the access road that is being proposed round to this new place that I've never heard of, with West Fork Manor, is in Liss. So it was quite interesting in a way to know what Gretham was saying about it. But the reason, and I underline what Nick has said, the reason I suggest a site visit, because indeed it's something that has morphed hugely over the years, and I suspect intention is that if there's success of business, they have plans for the future as well. So I think it's important that we get to understand the whole site and see what the potential is, and you know, we can make much better comments if we've seen it, I think.
Yeah.
I also, the materials, it is, as you say, proposing black. Gunmetal grey, I just hate. And that, you know, if they were green, it would probably be better than black. But that's the sort of thing we can perhaps look at when we go.
Okay.
Would it be, do you think it's conceivable that Gretham would agree to a joint visit?
I think there's 2 issues with that. I think one, they might, but the other thing I'm wary of is at the moment, the guidance that we have from the officers at Penn's place is that we shouldn't have more than 6 people on the site visit. And so we need to bear that in mind too, bearing in mind that of course the applicant may well wish to be there or his agent.
I suppose what I'm thinking about is the government is making a great deal of noise about sort of reducing the burden of planning on businesses, and to turn up twice would seem unreasonable. But for us to turn up and Gretham not to turn up would make parish councils look a bit ridiculous.
Well, yes, except this access lays in our parish, and I think to be honest, it's one of those ones where we've always both commented on it. But I think it's also I try to pick my words very carefully here, especially since we're going out on YouTube. I think the experience of Gretham Parish Council's planning committee would be that that for them a site visit is a very rare event. I think perhaps that's the most diplomatic way I can put it. So okay, can we say to ask the assistant clerk then to make contact with the case officer and see if we can arrange a site visit?
Will do, and I will be in contact with Gretham to see what their thoughts are on this planning application.
Okay, thanks, Lizzie.
Can I just say, historically, we have tended to have different approach to this.
Yes, true. Okay, so in which case then we move on to the final application, which is for the Newman Tollard Maintenance Building, which we all know where it is, and it's basically the refurbishment of what for many years has been our groundsman's hut, and the construction of an additional garage so that there's somewhere for us to keep our Parish Council Land Rover. I'm conscious that a number of us can't comment on this, namely Nick, Howard and Sue. So that leaves Sheila or Claire. So Claire, you can go first on this one.
Well, my first instinct is that it would be kind of silly for us to object to it. No, I think it doesn't seem to be a insensitive development. I'm sure we'll do all of the right things, and it's probably a good use of the space.
Okay. Sheila, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, no, just that the proposal is fully supported by the Playing Fields Trust, and which included the results of consultation with Liss Parish Council. So, in effect, we've already approved.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's. I can't. In all honesty, I can't see anything to object to it on. I think it makes good use of the site that's that's already a compound. So, I think we'll take from that. I think if we can make our comment through to the officers, Lizzie, just to solely be no objection, and we don't add anything on top of that, I think is probably the best that we can do.
Would the better part be not to comment at all?
Well, we should just not comment at all. Yeah, if that's what members feel. I'm quite open on that. Sue.
Really, the status of the public loos there.
The loos are being retained, and apparently they will be open more than they are now.
That's good. Great, thank you.
Okay, so I mean, are members happy that we just don't comment at all? I'm happy with that. Yeah, and I'm not seeing anybody disagreeing. So yeah, we just won't make a comment.
Okay.
Okay, so then moving on through the agenda, applications approved. We only have one this month, which is the cottages at East Hill Drive, which was this change of use. So that's now got approval. We don't have any refusals, any appeals or any appeal decisions or any applications withdrawn. We have one TPO application in Anderdash Road, so that will be referred to the tree officer for advice. Monitoring the neighbourhood plan is still ongoing. We're still waiting to set up a meeting with the National Park, but hopefully that might happen at some point soon now that we're back actually having occasional meetings again. The next one, number 16, is the proposed 3G/4G telecom site on Mint Road. And really it's to see if anyone has any comments on this. I mean, personally, I think it's actually quite a good use of that space. I can't see any significant issues with it. I will just draw to members' attention that there is one coming before us next month in the centre of the village, which I think might be a little more contentious than this one, but I'll leave that until it's actually on the agenda because we've not actually had the drawings for it. Yeah.
Can I ask, have I missed seeing some paper about this? Because I can't even, I don't know where it is in Mint Road.
Right, okay. There was a diagram that got, I think it got circulated, I hope it got circulated, but in case it didn't, basically, if you picture Mint Road, as you come off, if you come over the level crossing, turn right into Mint Road, just on the left there's an area of what is effectively sort of hard standing. It's where cars have traditionally just parked just off the road there. The aim is to put the telecoms mast in that location, just there where that hard standing is. And
will it look like a tree or a?
No, it is just a grey tower. There's no attempt to disguise it at all. But we did seek reassurance that it wasn't 5G, and it isn't. It is only 3G and 4G.
I can't really offer a view about this, but I do think we should have whatever information we can get about the one in the village centre before we're asked to offer a view.
So
ask the fencing around it. Presumably it's going to be that grey utilitarian fencing, which is just pretty awful to look at. You know, the electricity board put that up all over the place.
No, this fencing is very much just wire netting, so it's quite low key. It's concrete posts and wire netting. So.
Okay. It's just horribly cluttered on the other side of the road where the station people keep stuff, and people in Liss Forest have complained about that quite a lot over the years.
Yeah.
So if that area could be somehow enhanced rather than made worse would be good.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it should be said as well that because this is a utility, it's this pre-notification, so actually there's very little we can do to oppose it, but we can just put in our comments. Anyone else have anything they want to say on this? Claire, Sheila? No, Howard? No. Okay. So 17, the update on Charler development on Andrews Ash Road. Not really a great update to give you, except they have been quite proactive in wishing to have better links with us as Parish Council. And so they're going to provide us with regular updates for us to put out via the Parish Council social media. They have started the actual building site work on the site. Now they are actually up above foundation level on a number of the properties. And we have had assurance from them that once the current work in Andrews Ash Road is completed, that they're working on at the moment, then the temporary traffic lights will disappear, and they say never to return. I'm wary always of anybody who says never, but certainly for the foreseeable future, the temporary traffic lights will be gone. So hopefully that will be a positive step forward. So again, we'll just keep that as a watching brief, I think, and I'll update people next month unless anyone wants to add anything there.
When is the Sang opening up?
When is the
Sang going to be made available?
it has to be made available before the first house is occupied.
Oh, okay, I thought it was much sooner than that.
No, so it could be my guess would be in the spring, I would think, probably.
Okay.
Could I ask, Chair, the issue of the crossing over Hillbrow Road?
Yeah.
Which committee is responsible for keeping an eye on that and
that at the moment is going to the Highways Committee, because in essence, from a planning perspective, it's past that stage. If you see what I mean, it's now very much down to Highways, and Highways looking at what can be done. Lizzie, do you have anything to tell on that?
So I actually was outside the school with Joe Follen from Hampshire County Council looking at that, and someone from the SDMPA as well. And yeah, they were surprised, and they were sending, they were looking at the measurements, and they were going to review that crossing. They, you know, I put it to them, would you be happy if your child was going to school and crossing that there on their own? And both of them said no. So I think they will be reviewing it.
Okay.
So should we be asking Highways to actually, I mean, I just don't know enough about what dialogues happen, but should Highways be making proposals to the County Council?
It is on the agenda for the next Highways Committee, and to be honest, it is Joe Folland is, you know, he is looking at that, and we're currently they're looking at creating a school zone around there, and that will be part of the planning. Whether or not they even allow that crossing to open, or whether it's moved up further towards kind of the school way further up Hillbrow. You know, that it is with HCC now.
Thank you. I'm now satisfied that we're properly considering it.
We do have it in our sites in Highways, so never fear.
Okay. The Liss Village Centre redesign brief we've already done. So I'll just very quickly look around to see if anybody wants to indicate they've got any other business. Anyone got anything?
Could I just raise one thing, Keith, which is, I think I'm right in saying that all the other committees and the parish council itself now do meet at 7 o'clock.
Some, yes, on the whole they do, yes, yeah.
And I don't think we've had any indication that that's causing anyone problems. So I wondered whether we might revisit our start time at some stage. You know, we all have our own preferences, but I think it'd be useful at least to share our views about that and see if we could reach a consensus. The problem about what the parish council main meeting agreed about this was that just one individual can put the block on what the majority might prefer. And I think we should at least know if there's a real objection or just, you know, wishing to remain with what we've had before. I just have a marginal preference for 7, but others will have different views, no doubt.
Can I suggest we leave that until we're back meeting in person? Because my reason for that is I'm conscious that at the moment it's hard to judge whether the public would actually have an issue with this meeting at 7 or 7:30, because obviously we're not having public representations actually at the meeting, if that makes sense.
Okay,
because I'm hopeful, I mean, our next meeting's on the 24th of August. That will be a Zoom meeting as this one, but I'm hopeful that possibly with a fair wind, we might be in a situation where our September meeting can be actually a physical meeting, but it will have to be in the village hall, obviously, and not in the office.
so how will it being a physical meeting help us to judge how the public feel about it?
Well, only in the sense that if we have a public meeting, when we have a meeting in public, then the public can come along and to make representations actually in person, which they do sometimes, which they can't do now because they have to submit it by 4 o'clock in the afternoon anyway.
But what I would say is we can't make a decision if it's not an agenda item and it hasn't been an agenda item. We could put it on the next agenda.
That's true. That's true.
I mean, I'm not suggesting that we should try and do anything tonight, but I do think that if the public were finding it difficult to get there at 7, we would have the flexibility within the time of the meeting to adjourn and allow the public, that member of the public or those members, to speak about an application, providing they told us in advance. But you know,
yeah,
the public there is going to help us.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm happy for us to discuss it in the next meeting if you want. Howard, I think you want to come in on this.
Yes, I think it's very difficult to determine from the public what they wish for, because it's only a relatively few people in the village. But for those people who come, and it is a committee that people do come to from the public, it's very important to most of them that they are heard. And I believe that for that reason, it should stay at 7:30. I think that's the way I feel. From a personal point of view, I'm comfortable with 7, but I think from considering the public, I think it's unreasonable to have it before 7:30. And I remain of that view, I'm afraid. Sorry if I'm in a minority of one, but that's the way I feel.
Okay, thanks, Howard. So the date of our next meeting then will be the 24th of August at 7:30, and will be a Zoom meeting. As I say, I'm hopeful that we might be able to have a September meeting actually in the village hall with a fair wind behind us, but who knows at the moment, because again we seem to be in a COVID seems to be the gift that keeps on giving in terms of making life difficult. So with that, I think I'm going to call tonight's meeting to an end. So it's 20:58. Thank you everyone for attending. I'm just going to end the transmission on YouTube.